The blue zones are 5 places on Earth where people routinely live to 100 years of age in good health without really trying. The blue zones are living proof of the long game, and they're not biohacked or optimized. They're really just outliving, and they're doing it with day-to-day activities. The blue zones aren't doing anything special. The rest of us are doing something deeply unnatural.
Welcome to MD Longevity Lab, where we're playing the long game. This is a podcast where science meets real life with expert insights, practical tips, and real-world tools to not only live longer, but live better. Our aim is to radically change the way medicine is practiced and enable individuals to age gracefully, maintaining health span and vitality well into their later years. We're your hosts, Dr. Nisha and Dr. Vikas Patel, physicians, partners in life, and parents balancing work, wellness, and everything in between. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the MD Longevity Lab podcast where we're playing the long game. Nisha and I just got back from a couple weeks in Japan with our kids.
I don't know if it was a couple weeks. It was 9 days, but it felt like a couple weeks.
It was a while.
Yeah, it was enough.
It was a while not to be in your bed.
Right, for sure. We did, and I have one observation that I can't stop thinking about, which was kind of the inspo for this episode.
Just one?
Yeah, one. A big one. So across 9 days, we went to Tokyo, Kyoto, Arashiyama, Nara, Osaka, packed subway cars, tours, markets, temples, shrines. And I think we maybe saw 2 overweight people the entire time.
Just two?
The sumo wrestlers.
Whom you fought?
I did. I listened. I did, and I won.
Yes, they were totally trying. Yeah, so, for context, the most recent CDC data puts the U.S. adult obesity rate at right around 40% of the population. And if we contrast that to Japan, they have an obesity incidence of about 4 to 5%. That's not even like a remotely small gap between our two populations. That's like a tenfold difference between two wealthy, industrialized, very food secure countries.
Yeah. And you mentioned 40% obesity rate in the US, and that doesn't even include being overweight. So I think when you include overweight and obese for the US, it's about 80%. So the norm is to be overweight or obese in the US. It is rare to see someone at their proper weight and body fat. And in Japan, it's not because they're starving. We ate a lot. I think we ate more in Japan than we do here constantly, right? We were eating ramen, sushi, Wagyu beef, conveyor belt sushi, tempura, vending machine food, and 7-Eleven, Family Mart, convenience store food, which was literally one of the best things. Like, that's what the US needs to start doing. Those egg salad sandwiches and pancakes with butter and syrup in the middle. We need to start doing that here.
We are talking about, you just finished telling us about how we are eating too much and are overweight.
Well, so yes, I know. And I'm a foodie, but there is a world in which you can eat the way you want and not feel deprived. But, it's those egg salad sandwiches are a national treasure. And I'm going to stand by that.
All right, you stand by that.
Mm-hmm. And even though they're eating this food, right, there was a lot of the locals that were also eating convenience store food and conveyor belt sushi and ramen. The Japanese are not metabolically wrecked. They are not on medications by the age of 55. They are not in scooters, those little rascals, at age 65. We saw 80-year-olds running up the stairs to catch a train. Plural, multiple 80-year-olds, and moving faster than us sometimes after 20,000 steps.
I think a couple of them passed me.
I bet. I mean, I think we were just so amazed because that is just a foreign concept in most countries and definitely in the US to see 80-year-olds fully functional, moving, carrying groceries or bags, and definitely sprinting upstairs.
Yeah, and I think it made us realize a couple things that we've been chewing on since we got home. We've spent a lot of episodes telling people what not to do. Don't eat ultra processed foods, don't skip the resistance training, don't ignore your bone density, don't sleep just 6 hours a night. But I think somewhere during that trip, watching this society of people, they are basically just doing the basics by default. It occurred to us that we are kind of writing a complicated answer to what is actually a pretty simple question.
And that question is, how do people live long, functional, healthy lives?
Really, the answer has been, more or less sitting in plain sight for over 20 years now in five very distinct small communities scattered across the globe.
Yeah. So today we're talking about the blue zones. And these are 5 places on Earth where people routinely live to 100 in good health without really trying. They're not doing peptides and they're not injecting themselves with made in China stuff and doing these plasma transfusions. And we are going to go over what they have to teach us, which is pretty much everything.
So basically, there's these entire populations on this planet who outlive every American demographic while they're drinking wine with their friends, walking to the market, and eating beans, right? The blue zones are living proof of the long game. They're not like theoretical and they're not biohacked or optimized. They're really just outliving and they're doing it with kind of boring day-to-day activities.
Yep. And they're doing these boring activities decades over decades. So this isn't a crash diet or some, you know, 12-week overhaul that they're doing. This is just their lifestyle. And we can't stop thinking about it since we got home. It's been apparent. So that's part of the reason we thought this episode was so important, because going to Japan and then coming back here, you see the difference. You see how we are completely dependent on transportation and cars. Whereas for them, walking is just part of their day-to-day life. It is routine to get 10 to 15,000 steps just getting to work and back, riding the train system. And, you know, I think that was a huge inspiration for this episode.
Okay, so no fluff, no supplements, no plasma exchanges, just lots of beans.
Yep. And some science. So, quick background, because some listeners, I think, are hearing this for the first time. So, let's cover what the blue zones actually are.
The blue zones concept actually came from a journalist named Dan Buettner. He was working with some researchers, including demographer Michael Poulin. In the early 2000s, they basically identified 5 places on Earth where people live measurably longer and, crucially, much healthier than pretty much anywhere else on the planet. They drew blue circles on a map around those areas, and that's where the term blue zones comes from.
So, let's go over where these 5 blue zones are. Okinawa, Japan, not surprised. Sardinia, Italy, and it's specifically in the mountainous interior. Loma Linda, California, right? So we have one right here in the US, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, and Ikaria, which is a small Greek island in the Aegean Sea.
So, 5 wildly different places, different climates, different diets, different languages, religions, economies. On the surface, they really have almost nothing in common.
Yeah. Sardinia has more centenarian men than anywhere else on Earth. So that's men that have lived over the age of 100. Okinawa has historically the highest centenarian rate for women specifically, and Nicoya has the lowest middle-aged mortality rate in the world. Ikaria, and I love this one, has 1/3 of the rate of dementia compared to Western populations.
Wow, that's crazy. 1/3.
1/3. Yep. So it's normal here, I think, to have our elderly population like, oh, they're losing their marbles, Alzheimer's, dementia. We all have friends, family members that have suffered from it, and it's horrible. So to know that there are societies where this can be done is pretty powerful.
I mean, I think that alone should be on the front page of most newspapers in America, and it's not, mostly because I think there's not a pill for it, right?
Yep. And here's what's so striking about the blue zone research. When the team went in expecting to find some magic genetic variant, right? Or some secret superfood or some scientific breakthrough that they were hoping for, they actually didn't. What they found was the exact opposite, a set of 9 overlapping habits. None of them were exotic, rocket science. None of them were expensive. None of them were sold in a bottle. And they called them the Power Nine.
Exactly. And the Power Nine looks pretty much like the playbook we've been writing every episode in this podcast.
Yep. And without really even realizing it, we were never the original, right? We're the cover band, and we're hoping to get to the masses here in the US with our busy lifestyles.
Okay, so the blue zones are basically a study in evolutionary mismatch because the blue zones are not, in fact, special. There's nothing magical about their populations.
Yep. You've got to always tie in evolutionary mismatch and nerd out.
Yes. So blue zones are populations that kind of by accident of geography, isolation, tradition, poverty, they're still actually just living the way that humans actually evolved to live. They're not optimized. They are unbroken populations. For 99% of human history, every human lived in some version of a blue zone. It was constant low-level movement, whole foods that are mostly locally grown, close-knit social ties, multi-generational households, daily exposure to nature and sunlight, built-in purpose tied to the communities that they live in and their families, modest amounts of alcohol consumed socially, spiritual or religious practices, and strong tribal identity. That was the default. That was Tuesday, right? There was no like specific diet plan, no gym membership, no mindfulness app. The environment actually automatically did all of it.
Yep. And then, roughly over the span of just 2 generations, basically since World War II, in most of the developed world, we have systematically removed almost every single one of those things.
Exactly. We've engineered cars to replace walking, highways to replace neighborhoods, suburbs to replace villages, television to replace porches, smartphones to replace conversations, ultra processed foods to replace cooking, the 24-hour news cycle to replace silence, pills to honestly replace movement, streaming devices to replace sleep. We've taken everything that humans were calibrated for and we've erased it from the average daily environment.
And meanwhile, these 5 very small places on Earth, mostly by accident, didn't erase it. And it turns out those 5 places produce 12 times as many centenarians per capita as the rest of the world.
Which is kind of the entire thesis of, evolutionary mismatch in one sentence. The blue zones aren't doing anything special. The rest of us are doing something deeply unnatural.
Yep. So modern American disease is not really a mystery. It's basically what you've described as evolutionary mismatch. And the blue zones are not exotic. They're normal for a species that evolved to live exactly the way that they are still living.
Which is frankly a humbling thing to sit with, in our field as longevity physicians, because half the things we charge people for in our clinics, right? Like these populations, their grandmothers in Ikaria do them for free by accident, all before lunch.
Yeah, seriously. They're not doing like a VO2 max test or a full body DEXA scan to like track their metrics. But we live in this very busy society where we almost have to be extra intentional about it in this environment. Whereas in those blue zones, it's part of their day to day life. All right. So let's go through the Power Nine. And those are those habits that they describe in the blue zone. And we'll touch briefly on each of these because these are the habits that show up across all 5 blue zones, despite the populations, like you mentioned, having basically nothing else in common, right? Languages, food, crops, climate, so many differences. So let's go over it.
Okay, so the first one is move naturally. And this is the one in Japan that, I think we saw so much of. In blue zones, people don't exercise per se. They don't go to the gym. They don't have Pelotons. They don't really have step trackers.
Yeah, they're literally just moving all day, constantly, low level movement, whether it's walking, carrying their groceries. It's built into that environment.
I think we walked between 15,000 and 22,000 steps every single day that we were in Japan. And we weren't even trying. It was just the cities were designed for it. Even if you were trying to get to the train station, if the weather was terrible and it's raining, you could walk underground and you'd be walking 15 minutes underground to get to your train stop. Um, Everywhere there was stairs, right? Bicycles everywhere. All the markets you walk through, shrines you walk through. Maybe we saw like 3 escalators the whole time.
Yeah, like maybe an elevator in a big building, but escalators and elevators were not the norm.
So compare that to American suburban life, where it's literally possible, and I think many people do this daily, to go from bed to garage to car to office to garage to bed and literally accumulate 1,500 steps in a whole day.
Yeah, literally 1/20th of the amount of steps that most people get in across the world. Yeah, 1,500 steps in one day. That's it. And the hunter gatherers our bodies evolved from were averaging closer to 12 to 15,000 steps per day.
Yeah, that's 10 times the load. And, we wonder now why people can't get up off of the toilet or why they can't climb up a set of stairs. It's because their muscles just aren't used to doing the work that they were designed to do. All right, why don't you take us to number 2?
All right, number 2, purpose. The Okinawans call it ikigai. Do you want to go into this? Because I think you talk a little bit about this in the book.
Yeah, so Ikigai is literally this concept of having purpose, and it's similar in other populations, right? The Nicoyans call it plan de vida, which is roughly translated to the reason I get up in the morning. So in the blue zones, these populations universally have a strong sense of purpose. Even in retirement, there isn't necessarily a concept of retirement. There's this concept in Japan of ikigai, which is like, what is my purpose, even when I am no longer trying to earn a living, right? They still have purpose. It might be that they're caring for grandchildren, they're gardening, they're working in their community, contributing in some way that matters to the people they know or personally to them. They're taking classes. There's not like retirement in the sense that we think of it in the United States. And the data on this isn't soft. This idea of having a strong sense of purpose is associated with up to 7 additional years of life expectancy. The mechanism is partially behavioral and partially biological. Purpose honestly appears to modulate inflammation, cortisol, and cardiovascular reactivity. So compare that to the American retirement model. You work until you're 65, then you stop kind of doing anything. You sit in front of a television and you steadily decline. There is a measurable phenomenon called retirement-related mortality spike. The rate of cognitive decline accelerates in the years immediately following retirement in people who don't replace work with another source of purpose.
Yeah, your body listens to whether you're needed or not. And that doesn't mean you have to bring home an income. You just have to have some purpose.
That's right. Okay. Number 3, Niche.
All right. Number 3, downshift. Every blue zone has a built-in daily stress reduction practice. In Japan, they take a moment to remember their ancestors. The Adventists in Loma Linda, they pray. The Ikarians take a long afternoon nap, a siesta. That sounds great. The Sardinians do happy hour with friends. I also like that. The mechanism doesn't matter as much as the consistency of those stress reducing habits. they all have some way to bleed off the day's accumulated stressors.
And I think we don't, right? We just kind of absorb it. We stew in it. We marinate in it. And, we call that normal.
Yeah, it really is. The stress really doesn't go away. I think about our lifestyle, like we've got a preteen and 2 teenagers, and summers are supposed to be satisfying where we chill. And I feel like our summers are almost more stressful because we're working. They've got some camps, all this stuff, visiting family. And the only time we get to decompress and step away is when we travel to these blue zones, basically.
Yeah. All right. How about number 4?
All right. Number 4, the 80% rule. Okinawans have a phrase, hara hachibu. I'm probably butchering it, but it means eat until you're 80% full. It's recited before meals like a small ritual or a prayer, and it is biologically one of the most powerful longevity interventions ever identified.
Calorie restriction has been the single most reliable life extension intervention in animal studies for nearly a century. So the 80% rule is essentially calorie restriction without measuring or tracking anything. It is the Paleolithic version of intermittent fasting.
Yep. And the practical impact is wild. The average meal in a blue zone is significantly smaller than the average American meal. The largest meal is usually at lunch, not dinner. Dinner in blue zones is usually small and early. People stop eating before they feel full. See, we did our early anniversary dinner. Our dinner was 4:30. Like, that's my jam. In and out.
That's right.
It takes me like 4 hours to digest a meal.
Yeah. And then if you eat late and you go to bed, right, then you get reflux and you don't sleep that well. So, meanwhile, in the standard American restaurant portion now contains roughly the daily caloric requirement of an adult. And we do that in just one sitting, and we're kind of upset when there isn't like excess on the plate.
Right. And then there's dessert.
And then there's dessert.
Yeah. So, I mean, we love eating. We love food. And I think it's one of those things. Those meals are a treat when we go out to eat and we're eating. That one meal is almost the entire caloric intake is for one day, like you mentioned. But I think here in this country, there are people that eat fast food 5 times a week. That's just part of their daily routine.
I mean, I think we're good about this. Like, if we're going to go out to dinner and have a nice dinner, we basically don't eat anything the whole day.
Well, we have our protein shake.
We have our protein
Yeah.
shake.
Yeah. Which is like literally 70 grams of protein. So we hit probably most of our protein goal with that dinner. But yeah, we're definitely restricting beforehand. All right. Number 5, the plant slant. The blue zone diets are overwhelmingly plant-based, but not in the strict modern plant-based sense. Like this shishi when they're like, oh, I'm vegan, completely plant-based. They eat meat, they eat fish, they eat eggs and dairy, but the majority of every meal, usually 80 to 90% by volume, is plants. Vegetables, beans, lentils, whole grains, and nuts.
Beans, like specifically beans. Every blue zone, every single one of them eats roughly a cup of beans a day, whether that's in the form of lentils in Sardinia, black beans in Nicoya, soy in Okinawa, chickpeas and lentils in Ikaria, beans in Loma Linda. There is just something about the bean.
Right? There's fiber, protein, it's resistant starch, phytochemicals, polyphenols, minerals. Beans are the closest thing to a longevity superfood that has ever existed, and they cost $2 a pound. And these people are buying like the super mixed green superfood that's like $8 a day, thinking that they're maximizing their longevity. So we don't need to make it harder than it is. You don't need to look further than beans.
Are you saying we don't need AG1?
I said what I said.
All right. Number 6.
We don't get kickbacks from AG1 like half of the longevity influencers out there. So
We don't get kickbacks from anyone.
from anyone. Yeah. Which is why this podcast production is probably top notch.
Just bootleg.
Totally bootleg. But you know what? I think that gives us some credibility. We are not paid to say any of this stuff. And I think that's where that conflict of interest happens is we're recommending stuff if we're getting paid by that company, you should think twice and have a skeptic eye when listening to us. Okay, end of rant. Sorry.
Moving on.
All right, number 6, wine at 5 o'clock. Most blue zone populations drink alcohol moderately and daily with friends, with food. And that's crazy because all the data that's coming out now in our Western world is alcohol is bad.
Yeah, and before anyone like writes angry direct messages to us or on our social media, we're not like wine cheerleaders here. I mean, maybe my wife is. And we did do a whole episode on alcohol. The data on heavy drinking is unambiguous. It's bad. But the pattern in blue zones is like 1 or 2 small glasses of wine with dinner with companions, never alone, never to excess. The context of drinking matters as much as the dose. And if it's a small dose and the rest of your habits are really good, you're likely negating the negative effect of the alcohol.
And like you said, it's not alone. People aren't sitting in a bar drinking alone or sitting at home downing a whole bottle of wine. They're interacting with other people. Loma Linda, by the way, is the exception. The Adventists don't drink and they outlive everyone too. So this one is less universal than the others. The unifying principle is probably moderate social ritualized consumption of alcohol or none at all, not American binge drinking culture or happy hour.
Don't put down a 12-pack watching Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I kind of have this rule. If you're watching sports more than playing them, you might want to rethink your life choices. It's a fair rule.
I mean, the World Cup is on right now, and I am watching a lot of soccer.
You are watching a lot of soccer and not playing 8 hours of soccer a day. There are exceptions. The World Cup happens every 4 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Number 7 is belonging. Most Blue Zone centenarians belong to a faith-based community. They attend regular services. The exact religion obviously varies: Christianity, Buddhism, Adventist, Greek Orthodox, but the consistent factor is regular communal worship.
Something that I thought was interesting in Japan, I think it was something like 80% identify as Buddhist and 80% also identify as Shinto. So they do not throw religion in other people's faces. They're very spiritual, which I think is so different here in the US, where it's something people talk about and display very openly, and kind of in a judgmental way. So I thought it was super cool in Japan that people were religion, spirituality was very important, but it wasn't in your face like it is here.
I mean, the key to this, right? The research on this is striking. Like attending religious services 4 times a month is associated with 4 to 14 additional years of life expectancy, depending on the study. It's not really because of the theology, right? It's the community. It's showing up. It's being known. It's singing in unison with other people. It's being missed when you're not there. They are ingrained into a community, a communal practice together where their presence is felt by the other people in the community and vice versa.
Yep. We have systematically dismantled that in every secular version of this. By the way, bowling leagues, right? Service clubs, neighborhood associations. The American social calendar in 2026 looks like solitary confinement compared to what humans evolved to actually need.
Okay. Number 8 is loved ones first. So blue zone populations keep aging parents and grandparents close, often in the same household or next door. Children are raised inside a multi-generational network. Marriage is typically durable and family is dense.
Which is the literal opposite of the American model, where we ship aging parents off to a nursing home facility. We scatter children across the country, call each other FaceTime on holidays, and really outsource our childcare. Obviously, we did that as physicians too, but it is very hard to be a working parent in American society. And now, even as a dual physician household, it used to be 50 years ago, you could have one parent work, one parent stay at home. Now, even a 2-income household, you could still be struggling, which is pretty sad.
Yeah. If you call back to one of our previous episodes, the cost of dismantling the family unit is not just emotional, it's longevity shortening on both ends. So grandparents lose purpose and connection, grandchildren lose mentorship and witnesses to their life. Everyone kind of loses.
I know. And I think both of us align on that with our kids. We are so lucky that all 4 of their grandparents are alive and healthy, knock on wood. And that is the one thing money can't buy, which is time with their grandparents. Our parents sharing stories of how they lived so that one day maybe they can pass that on. So we have prioritized family time over travel sports weekend because, I mean, you only get a finite amount of time with them. So I know we didn't grow up with all that. I My grandma passed away on my mom's side before I was even born.
Yeah, same. I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
one of my grandfathers that passed years before I was born.
Yeah. All right. Number 9, the right tribe. Your closest 5 friends are the strongest predictor of your behavior, your habits, your weight, your mood, and arguably your lifespan.
So the Okinawans actually formalized this. They formed groups of 5 friends. I'm sure I'm saying this wrong, called Moai. And these friends are committed to each other for life, financially, socially, emotionally. It is essentially an arranged friendship contract that lasts 80 plus years.
Which is wild, but it's also beautiful.
Compare that to the American friendship model, where most adults over the age of 35 have not made a single new close friend in a decade, and they report feeling lonelier than at any prior moment in their lives.
Yeah. Loneliness is statistically as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And we did not make up that statistic. That is a peer reviewed finding.
And the blue zones don't really have that loneliness problem, right? They have a friendship surplus, which is just a wonderful problem to have.
Let's move on to the next segment. Why isn't this a standard advice? And none of what we just walked through, those 9 pointers, the blue zones research has been published in National Geographic. There are documentaries, there's best-selling books, there's literally a Netflix series with that same name that any of you can watch.
And yet, nothing has changed at a population level for us. American obesity is going up, not down. American life expectancy has been declining for several years running. Why is that?
Because the blue zones don't have a marketing budget.
Because there's no IPO behind eating beans and walking with your friends.
Yep. Because if a longevity intervention cannot be patented, can't be injected, and can't be sold for $400 a month, the wellness industry will not promote it.
And, this is kind of the deepest irony in the longevity space in 2026. We have biohackers that are literally, transfusing their teenagers' plasma. We have $40,000 stem cell tourism. We have NAD drips, peptide stacks, gene therapies, hyperbaric chambers, 24-hour glucose monitors on people without diabetes. And yet we have these populations living the answer for free right now. And they're doing it as we're recording this.
Yeah. And these blue zones have been the answer for thousands of years. And the blue zones are not exotic. They're not unreachable. It's not genetics, but they are, in fact, the most boring possible answer to the question of how to live a long, healthy life, right? Walk, eat plants, have friends, have purpose, sleep, have a glass of wine with your dinner, with your loved ones, if that's your thing, right?
Yeah, I remember, like, I actually think back and remember, like, this was fun. Remember during COVID, right? Like, everybody, especially early on in COVID, there was like the social distancing. We didn't know how exactly how it was spreading. So I remember like a group of guys in the neighborhood, basically we filled one of our kids like red flyer wagons with beer, and we just walked around the neighborhood having a beer or two and catching up. And so it was like you're spending time outside, you're getting in steps, you're socially bound to this group of people while sharing one or two alcoholic beverages.
I'm sure if it was just one or two. But when was the last time they happened?
It died with COVID.
I know.
Yeah.
So there were some beautiful parts post-pandemic. People were nice to each other briefly. I think people paused. People were taking their medicines. They were cooking more, sleeping more. So there was that little glimpse of hope that kind of died. But so we need to be more intentional about the way that we live now. And I think that's more the point.
Yeah. So how about let's share a couple of the things that we took home from Japan.
Yeah. Specific moments from this trip that we want to share because it made all of this concrete in a way that nothing else has. So stairs, Tokyo Station, our first hotel was near there. Tokyo Station is an entire city under the train station. Layers of platforms, mezzanines, corridors, restaurant streets. We tried Ramen Street, which was super cool. We walked the stairs there at least 20 times across the trip, right? Not once did I look around and see anyone visibly struggling. Not once.
Yeah, as an ER doctor, like it's very hard not to look through a crowd of people and have it not be apparent who's struggling, who's unhealthy, right? There's like basically no one. I don't remember anyone in the couple weeks that we were there that I felt like was what's pretty much normal here. Like, right, you go to any shopping plaza in the US and you can see people that literally have to stop and catch their breath while they're walking. None of that.
The two places we did see it, in Arashiyama, there's this place called Monkey Park where it's like a
Oh, yes.
25-minute uphill hike.
Sure.
And there was definitely not locals struggling, there was tourists struggling. And a lot of them were middle-aged. Their kids were running up the hill and the parents, there was benches along the way and it was all American tourists that were sitting there literally looking like they were about to keel over. And I think that was sad. Like, I know I thought about it at that moment. I never want to be a parent that cannot keep up with my children. And that was a moment, I think, for hopefully some people would look at themselves and be like, man, I got to get my act
I
together.
remember walking down.
Yeah.
There were some of those people were like literally asking us, should we keep going? Is
Yeah.
it worth it to make it to the top? And we're like, yes.
It's worth it. And then also at Fushimi Inari Shrine, that was a lot of uphill stairs. And that was in Kyoto. And I feel like there was a lot of tourists also that just aren't used to walking or doing steps. And they were visibly struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. So how about the 7-Eleven phenomena?
Oh, yeah. American 7-Eleven is a strip mall purgatory of taquitos, Slurpees, and just
Hot dogs.
apple pies, junk. Japanese 7-Elevens sell egg salad sandwiches that are genuinely delicious, onigiri made with real fresh fish, pre-cut fruit, fresh salads, miso soup, and 100 small protein-forward options for under $5. Their gas station food is healthier than most American chain restaurant food. That's crazy.
The food environment is just completely different. The default option in Japan is whole ingredients, modest portions, prepared fresh food. The default option in America is still ultra processed, oversized, and truly engineered for hyperpalatability.
And I mean, their candy and processed junk is amazing. And our kids had candy every single day, but you flip over the label and now with Google Translate, you can translate any language. And the ingredient list is about 1/5 the size of our ingredient list with candies here too. So, I mean, technically candy's there. It's good for you. That's what our kids told themselves. No, but same human biology, different default, and wildly different outcomes. America versus Japan,
Yeah.
right?
We noticed grandparents, right? We saw lots of elderly people everywhere, walking, shopping, on trains, ending shop. We saw 75-year-olds, 80-year-olds running quick errands with grocery bags that they were carrying. We saw an 85-year-old woman ride a bicycle past our hotel one afternoon. It's like everywhere.
I know. And it stopped me because that is genuinely not something you see in America and definitely not in the American suburbs. Where are the American 80-year-olds? They're inside. They're in cars. They're in nursing homes. They're not on the streets moving. They are not in the markets, not taking the stairs, not definitely not on their bikes like that 80-year-old.
And they're not moving as fast as the 30 and 40-year-olds, right? Like in Japan, everybody moves at the same pace. Everyone has, people just don't have mobility issues like we are very accustomed to. The visibility of healthy older adults in Japan is its own intervention. Like the grandchildren are growing up, watching their grandparents stay active. That is a totally different model of what aging looks like.
Yeah. And let's talk about the pace. The meals, even though they came out quick, the meals took a little bit longer. Conversations were unhurried. People sat with friends in restaurants. The whole tempo of daily life felt like Vikas and I, like this was day 3. We could live here. I know I say that every time we travel. I'm like, I want to live here. And our kids are kind of like that too. And Vikas says to snap me out of it. But I would probably last a week.
Yeah, and I think like it's kind of like the country hasn't been ruined by smartphones.
Yeah. They all use the smartphone, but it's interesting. Like on the trains, they're using the smartphone because they do not want to impede on anyone. The trains were silent, right? Like their goal is to not get in anyone else's way, which is so different than here, where it's like America, like you just cut someone off driving. I will, but it made me think twice when I got back.
Yeah. Then we flew back and watching the food carts come down the aisle, right? Like this is American eating habits intersecting with everyone else's in real time. And I feel like it's not flattering for us.
Yeah. And then we landed. So we had a layover from Tokyo to Vancouver and then Vancouver to Chicago. And it just so happened that there was a group of people that were flying back to Chicago from an Alaskan cruise. And I would love to do an Alaskan cruise, but it was interesting, the demographic. I think I counted more scooters and motorized chairs on that flight than we saw like in an entire 10 days in Japan. It was crazy.
100%. So, you know, how do we actually build, that blue zone life in America? I think this is kind of the hard part. You can't just like pick up and move to Sardinia. I mean, I guess you could, but it'd be tough. Most of us can't really recreate that Japanese commuting pattern. We live in an environment that is by design the opposite of what we evolved for.
So the question is, what can you actually do where you are to import as much of the blue zone life as possible?
So number one, right? Move naturally. You have to engineer it in. You got to like literally park at the end of the parking lot. So you're taking extra steps. You need to take the stairs when it's an option. Walk to the grocery store if you can. Walk after meals. Get a standing desk. Pace during phone calls. Stop optimizing for convenience. Convenience is actually the disease.
Yeah, that's a hot take, but it's correct.
Yeah, convenience is definitely a disease of our modern world. The blue zones aren't really convenient. They are engaged.
Yep. Number 2, eat beans. Add a cup of beans or lentils to your daily intake. That's it. Hummus counts. Black bean tacos count. Lentil stew counts. Sardinian minestrone actually counts. You do not need to inject a peptide stack. You just need beans.
All right, 3. Find your 3. You don't need a Japanese village. You need 3 close friends, and you need to see them regularly in person with intention. Schedule them. Defend the time the way you would defend your doctor's appointment. They are actually part of your medical care team.
Yeah. And if you don't have 3, that's the most important problem to solve this year, not your peptide supplement stack.
4, build a purpose statement. Why you get up in the morning. If you have to think about it for more than 30 seconds, that's your work for the next decade.
Yep. Ikigai, right? That's what
That's
the
right.
Japanese say. Purpose. Find it.
All right. 5, the 80% rule. Eat until you are 80% full. Stop. Don't finish your plate if you've gotten to 80%. That's not a virtue. That's a 19th century parental guilt trip masquerading as nutrition. Leave food, push the plate away. Your stomach takes about 20 minutes to register fullness. By the time you feel full, you've already overeaten.
Remember when our folks used to say, there's starving kids in India, you better finish your plate. It's like when we were kids, it's different. But now if you're full, like you've eaten too much. 80% is enough. All right, number 6, belong somewhere, right? That can be faith community, service organization, volunteer commitment, neighborhood book club. For me, it's my weekly tennis with my friends. Uh, and it's anything that you have to show up for regularly to a place where the same humans expect to see you repeatedly for decades. Because I know with our tennis classes, if someone doesn't show up a week or 2 in a row, we're like, wait, what's going on? Did something happen? Are they okay? So it's that built-in kind of accountability that you have.
All right. 7, pace yourself. You have to build that downshift into your day. Walk in the morning, meditate, pray, nap, garden. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, the mechanism just doesn't matter. It's the consistency over time that matters.
Number 8, not always possible, but keep aging parents close if you can. And mentor someone younger. Multi-generational living is not always possible, right? But generational relationships most definitely are.
9, have the small glass of wine with a friend. If you drink, if you don't, skip it entirely. The dentists also live to 100 without alcohol. What is not the answer is the entire bottle of wine alone on the couch after a hard day.
Yep. Bonus 10th that we're throwing in, get outside. Sun, air, weather, dirt. The blue zones did not optimize their vitamin D from a capsule. They don't need a vitamin D supplement. They get vitamin D from being outside, and you should too. All right, give us the elevator pitch.
Okay.
Like if someone had to ask for the Cliff Notes version of what this episode is about.
The blue zones are 5 places on Earth where people routinely live to 100 years of age in good health without really trying. They have almost nothing else in common except a shared set of habits, right? They move naturally all day. They eat a plant-forward diet, lots of beans. They eat to about being 80% of fullness. They drink moderately and socially. They have found purpose in their lives throughout their lives. They belong to tight-knit communities. They keep their family close. They downshift every day. They prioritize the right circle of friends.
Yep. None of these are exotic, and none of these require a supplement. And most definitely none of them require a pill. They're simply the way that humans evolved to live. And the way that those small 5 communities, those blue zones, they still live. And it's not by accident of geography and tradition, because we talked about it. All of them have different religions, climates, economies. The rest of us have engineered all of those things out of our daily lives, and we are paying for it in the form of obesity, chronic disease, depression, and a health span that's shrinking, not growing.
The blue zones aren't theoretical. They are literally living proof of the long game. While, in America, we're trying to inject our way out of chronic disease. Ikarian grandmothers are outliving them by 2 decades and drinking wine with their friends and tending a garden.
Yep. So eat beans, walk with friends, find your ikigai, your purpose, and stop optimizing for convenience.
And maybe occasionally just look up at the people who've already figured it out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of MD Longevity Lab Playing the Long Game. If this episode was useful, please share it with a friend who has a supplement cabinet but no walking partner.
If you want help applying the long game to your life, please subscribe to our podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review. Please send us messages. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Visit our website at mdlongevitylab.com. And please follow our Substack where we cover some of these same topics in more depth. Otherwise, we will see you next time.
Thank you for playing the long game with MD Longevity Lab. You can visit us at www.mdlongevitylab.com to learn more about how we can support you on your journey. Stay connected with us on social media at MD Longevity Lab for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes insights. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, left us a rating, or shared it with someone you know who's also playing the long game. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.